Okay, so recently I was watching one of the Iron Sheik documentaries. This is the A&D one, so heavy WWE influence. And so they gloss over some certain aspects here and there. And they talked about his shoot background, his actual legitimate wrestling background, him being a champion in Iran, being a bodyguard for the royal family. You know, those sorts of things that he talked about were legitimate. And when he came to the States, he actually trained Olympians, American Olympians in wrestling. And knowing that he was easily the prototype for the quote unquote evil foreign heel, and that the reason why we had Hulkamania and by extension WrestleMania, and by extension WWE as it is now, is because of how amazing of a heel Iron Sheik was. And I was like, well, what happens if he were to have happened to have crossed paths with an American Olympian in Kurt Angle? This, of course, is Kurt Angle from his TNA days. So, and I've always had to do these sorts of things. You know, this is just my thoughts, my opinions. By all means, feel free to disagree with certain things in the comments. I mean, that's why they're there. So let's try to get right into this. All right, strength. If you ever go back and watch some of the old Iron Sheik promos, he grabs these two gigantic clubs and he just twirls them like it's nothing. He was an absolute tank. Kurt Angle, by extension, not a slouch at all when it comes to how physically powerful he was. But that was never really his game. Like when they showed the Sheik back in the day, he was built. He was a massive individual. So I'm gonna give the Iron Sheik the edge when it comes to strength because he was a massive, like hulking individual. I'm pretty sure he was probably not quite Lesnar in size, but definitely up in that category. Comes to speed. Now again, this might be more of just the era in which Sheik fought, but he never really needed to be fast. He was the wall that pretty much like beat you down in the process. Let me see if I can do this real quick. See if he'll let me do the alignment to get that centered. I'm going to, no, I just want just to center. And I'll go to this side, and let's do the same thing. Yes, I'm doing this live as I'm doing it. So definitely Kurt Angle, just almost by extension and the way that wrestling is at this point in time, definitely a faster individual. You know, he was known for his much greater level of speed and quickness. Endurance, also Kurt Angle. He's had multiple matches that have gone 40 minutes to an hour. Sheik, that really wasn't what it was back then. He really didn't have super long matches. Toughness. Probably a bit of a controversial one. If you don't agree that the Sheik was a tough guy, go back and watch some of the absolute bloodbaths he had with Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, those two guys. I mean, yes, Kurt Angle has had some amazing matches, and yes, Kurt Angle won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck. But you just watch the lifestyle wrestlers had back then, and the absolute just ridiculous bloody brawls that Iron Sheik got involved with back in the day, and there's no doubt that that guy was as tough as a $2 steak. Striking. I'm going to give this one to the Sheik. He was the technical brawler, and so he had lots of really good hard strikes, good elbows. And another advantage I would have to give him when it comes to striking is he had the quote unquote loaded boot, which he would tap into the ground and hit the hook at the end of it. So definitely I would give him an edge when it comes to striking. Again, this is more of the way wrestling was back then. You did a lot more punches, a lot more kicks, a lot more knees to the gut. So definitely a lot more of like a again technical brawler. You know, grappling. This one definitely goes to Kurt. Again, probably more signs of times. Kurt, a lot more suplexes, a lot more slams. You did see Iron Sheik throw those out from time to time, but it wasn't the sizzle to his steak. It's not what he needed to do. He was definitely more of striking, grinding, wear you down. Where Angle definitely had much more slams, suplexes, a whole just wide array of different moves that he could do. And of course, like there's slightly more of the MMA influence now as opposed to what it was back when Sheik wrestled. So that also would definitely give a definite level of attribute and ability to Kurt Angle that just Sheik wouldn't have had at the time. Submission. So now we're looking at the devastating camel clutch. And if you see some of the ways Sheik used to put it on people, lots of people said that that move was incredibly painful. He would sit down, he would crank. He would crank on you. So I'm comparing that versus, the ankle lock. Kurt's ankle lock, fantastic move. It was, but actually did tap out somebody like Kane. He got a lot of great wins with it. But there's something about how iconic Sheik's camel clutch was. Break your back, make you humble. High flying. Yeah, this is, Sheik never left his feet. He didn't need to. Where Kurt has probably one of the most beautiful moonsaults I think you will ever see a wrestler perform. The ones he used to do off of cages, it was just perfect. You could almost probably map out his arc from multiple matches, and it was almost an identical sort of trajectory. So again, sign was wrestling at the times. Over with the crowd. This one I could see going either way, but I'm gonna give it to Kurt. If you are wrestling in the U.S. and it's Kurt versus Sheik, Kurt is going to get a tremendous amount of babyface reaction. He's going to get that tremendous face pop. Every time he does a comeback, it's going to be beautiful, and the crowd's going to love it. Where everybody absolutely hated the Sheik. Sheik was someone who was stabbed a couple of times. So, that was the heat back then. If someone didn't try to stab you or shoot you, or if you didn't have to leave the building inside the trunk of a car, you weren't getting the proper level of heat back during Sheik's time. But we don't see that sort of nowadays. And with Kurt being the all-American Olympic babyface, I definitely do see the crowd being firmly behind him. Ring psychology. Sheik Baby was all about psychology. He did punches, he did kicks, he ground you down. And, like I mentioned in striking, the loin of the boot. Doing just the right amount of heel things, as well as having someone like he had a decent amount of managers during his time, and spitting on his opponent. Oh, if you really want to get somebody upset, spitting on them is a great way of doing it. And I picture someone like Kurt Angle probably come down with the flag, Sheik would have his flag, and I very much would picture, Sheik getting some heat on Kurt, and then walking over, unfurling, Old Glory, and just spitting on it. Just to really get the crowd really super invested into the match. Mic work. As much as we love how Sheik became later on in his career, he didn't need to talk a lot. He talked about how America sucked and how Iran was number one, and he would spit on the ground. That's all he needed to do. He didn't need to cut a long-winded promo. He needed to talk about how strong and how powerful he was, break your back, make you humble. We think about him now, and he is an absolutely hilarious individual to listen to. But he didn't need to work the mic that much. Where Kurt had really solid mic work. Started out kind of on the bland side, but over time he really developed a fantastic character. Now, if you're looking around the time this video is being uploaded, it kind of makes sense why Kurt's going to go over in this. Just from a physical attribute standpoint, this is looking at how different the industry is now as opposed to how it was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You could be a guy who was just a tough guy. You could do a lot more striking. You didn't need to do mic work. You didn't need to high fly. You just really needed to get the crowd invested in what was going on in the ring and beat your opponent down and do the least amount of damage to your body because you knew you were going to wrestle probably 4 or 5 more times during that week. So with this, I do think Kurt definitely does take the victory with this. And as always, disagree, so the comment section is for.